You're listening to the Zoe Turner podcast, business and mindset conversations that will help you move from fear and uncertainty to development and growth so that you can crush both life and business. Please welcome your host, Zoe Turner.
Today's guest is bubbly, raw, honest, and passionate, and she was thrust into the media spotlight in 2014 and 15 when she appeared in the reality show Benefit Street, and then later Celebrity Big Brother. So it's fair to say that her life changed overnight, and she's experienced the highs and the lows of being in the tabloids, part of which I would like to touch on today. So welcome to the podcast today, Dee Kelly.
Oh, thank you for having me, Zoe. I mean, that's a brilliant introduction, and I absolutely love that, the bubbly and raw bit. I mean, I've never been described as that before, but I think you've actually just, nailed it. That's exactly what I am, bubbly and raw.
Yeah, I think you are. My introductions used to be really long, so I'm trying to keep them a little bit short and succinct now. And when I first got introduced to you, it was about a month ago, I think, a couple of months ago, through Kelly Maloney, and we were on the Zoom. That was the first thing that stuck out to me, how bubbly you were and likable you were and raw you are. So it seemed like a perfectly apt intro.
Oh, thank you.
Dee, what are you grateful for today?
What am I grateful for?
Yeah.
Oh, do you know, I think every day I'm just so grateful for actually just being able to open my eyes, I think. Life's hard, and I don't think it's any sort of secret. But even before I was thrust into, shall we say, the limelight with the documentary, I have suffered really bad with mental health. But obviously, dealing with mental health issues pre being thrust into the limelight is 1,000,000% easier than obviously having to deal with it kind of now, if that makes sense. It's like sort of, we did this documentary in 2014. It was the most watched documentary of its time. And, it was very, very controversial. But then it kind of just led to, should we say, just things completely spiraling out of control. It's like, I've always grown up, I was born and bred in Birmingham, UK, and, it's kind of like, mother to two children, just dealing with life as life. And then sort of this documentary that's been aired worldwide just changed that, and it changed it kind of not gradually. It did, as you said, it changed life overnight.
For those that don't know, the documentary that you starred in, it was a reality show, and it was based in Birmingham, which is your hometown. And it was based in your street, which was James Turner Street. Shares my surname actually. Yeah. And so tell us a little bit about the show and what were the positives and negatives of being on it.
It was a documentary called Benefit Street, and obviously it was filmed on our street, which was James Turner Street in Winson Green in Birmingham. Winson Green is probably classed as, should we say, one of the deprived areas of Birmingham, but it focused on, or what it was supposed to have focused on, was how, as a community, we all stuck together and we all helped each other out, and it just followed how we lived, how we got on, and things like that. But then, I suppose the same as any show, if you're going to get the ratings, you have to, step it up a bit, I suppose,
sensationalize it.
Yes, most definitely, and And even though we had like these cameras following us around and filming our lives for over 18 months,
Wow.
so it's not even as if it was kind of like, boom, 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 let's do it, film. 18 months we had these people in our lives. So you can imagine, everything they got the, family parties, the happiness, the sadness, the children growing up and things like that. And then when you edit 18 months worth of a whole street's lives into 6 1-hour shows, then you kind of know. But over, obviously, in the UK, um obviously you've got, the benefit system, and even back to like 2014, the benefit system is one of the most controversial things that you could probably ever film a documentary on, to engage kind of like the hatred and everything, because there's so many people in this country that are so against the benefit system, that if you glamorize people who are part of that system and put it onto our TV screens, then you know the reaction that you're going to get. And Channel 4, credit to them, they succeeded in the editing. But we were very lucky, because we then had it on the other hand, where people were like, but that's just like us. They're normal people, just like us. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and I think that's kind of what I suppose has led to me sort of still being here and still being known as, obviously Dee from Benefit Street, who's then gone on, like you said, to do Celebrity Big Brother and being, oh God, I think I've done over 200 probably TV shows, and I'd hate to even think how many, radio and newspaper interviews, and I'm still kind of like, still here, still plodding on, and still recognised whenever I walk out the front door.
So you were saying, you were talking about your mental health earlier, and saying that you've always struggled with mental health even before the show, but it was easier to deal with then. Don't you think we grow though? And as we grow, like it's like 6-7 years, right, since this show started, and I would imagine that you've grown a lot within yourself. You're a lot more self-aware, and you've also grown a lot professionally as well, and you've moved forward a lot in your life. Does that not help you navigate and deal with your mental health better?
Not really, and I think it's actually made it that bit harder. If I'm honest with you, it's kind of like, I mean, if we go back in 1997, was when I had my daughter. And I was diagnosed. It was obviously, she was born in December 1997. So the following year, I was actually diagnosed with postnatal depression. But you kind of, I don't know, back then it was kind of like an unheard of sort of, postnatal depression. You kind of just got on with it. I mean, I didn't take the medication that I was given, because I didn't kind of feel that I was suffering with postnatal depression, if that makes sense. And I suppose I had like a really good network of support. I suppose it's the stigma, isn't it, attached to taking medication, or someone being told that you've got like, it wasn't. I don't think I would have even seen it as a mental health condition back then. But you kind of just plod on with life, don't you? And then in 2011, which is really, timeline wise, obviously in 2011, I lost my mum, and kind of like, she was one of the, the most important person in my life. And then it was 2012 that I actually suffered a nervous breakdown. And that's kind of really when, the mental health sort of side really did affect me. So it's kind of probably, in the timeline sort of way of things, it's like not long, I suppose, after losing my mum, and things like that, I then took part in a documentary, which is just really weird. So I can't say whether or not I had my wits about me 100%. Um, but when this is kind of aired and when it's said, but mental health, it isn't a visual disability. So you can understand if you've got, the media and everything saying, mum of two suffers with depression. And then you've got the whole world who's watching this program going, well, which bit of that looks depressed? But then obviously they didn't air the bits where, where you're lying in your bed for 5, 6 days and you're crying your heart's break. But obviously they're not going to air that on the television. So I then had to kind of I suppose from the outset, come out and I'm kind of having to justify my life and justify when you don't see. How can you say I'm not, I'm not depressed or I'm not suffering with a mental illness just by what you've seen on the TV screens? And I remember I was doing it was actually a live debate. And I think it was actually on Channel 4, a Channel 4 live debate. And there was a journalist there. Now you know how you see it, Zoe, when you've got the tiers of should we say the media, you've got what you'd class the Telegraph and the Guardian, as most people would see as kind of an upper class read, and then obviously you've got the tabloids. And I remember there was a female reporter there, no, female journalist there, and she was actually from the Telegraph. And it was her in the middle of a live debate who actually said, well, you don't look depressed. And it's kind of oh my God, did you really just say that? Do you know what I mean? And it's kind of and that's when I kind of look, well, how does a depressed person look? How does someone with a mental health issue look? Do you know what I'm saying? And it's kind of and then she actually got up and she kind of left she left the debate. And it was kind of at that moment you think, do you know something? It's kind of mental health is really not taken seriously. And it's because you can't see it. And you see these memes and everything going around. I mean, I suppose the most high profile would be Robin Williams. Every movie that man's made and things like that. And it's kind of, and he actually took his own life, because of depression. And this again, just because someone smiles every once in a while, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're okay.
Yeah, and it's crazy that when there's someone in authority like that woman was, and she was a woman as well. Women don't stamp on other women. That's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to build each other up. So not only was she showing her ignorance, which she showed herself of, and probably the newspaper as well.
And again, I think it goes down to a massive, there is a massive class divide. Do you know what I'm saying? It's kind of there's no sort of, and there shouldn't be, and there's not sort of in my eyes. And this again, it's kind of I take people as I find them. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's you saying, guys, social media is such an outlet for pure hatred, and it's allowed, and it's kind of it seems to be acceptable via social media outlets. And I think that's probably why, because, predominantly what I do now is social media based, that it's probably not better and it is worse, because every day you don't know what you're going to open, what you're going to click on. But I've learned, shall we say, over the years to kind of because a lot of people say to me, how do you deal with all these people and their comments and their their hatred? And I'm like, I deal with it because I don't read them. And that's what I've kind of learned, because the only thing that kind of interests me is how the people I know and love think of me. I really don't care what Mr. Joe Bloggs, who lives in a completely different part of the country, who's never met me and will probably never ever meet me in his life, thinks of me, because they don't know me. And that's kind of what I've always said. And it's it's really strange, because in the early days of obviously, being this kind of like coming into the public eye, etc. I used to be of the mindset, if you come for me, I'm going to come for you, kind of thing. And it's like everybody would send me a message, and it'd be like, "Who do you think you are?" And "You're not this, and you're not that." And I'd reply, and I'm kind of not the type of person that will back down easily either. So do you know what I mean? And it's kind of like, um, but it's really strange because I actually came face to face with, should we say, like a couple of my trolls over the years. And I've kind of like, I will sort of, go up and I say, you know, "Oh, you're so and so," and we've actually become really, really good friends now. And I think that goes to show that a lot of people, you do form an opinion of anybody. Like if you're watching sort of like, even if you're watching any TV show, or even if you're out and about in a supermarket or walking down the street, you can actually just look at someone and go, "Oh, oh, look at them," but you don't know them. And that's kind of, what I've learned. And my motto is, don't you everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but don't come at when you don't actually know me. If you want to know someone, take the time to get to know somebody. And that's kind of like, and then if afterwards you don't like me, then you don't like me, but it's kind of no skin off my nose, to be fair. And I think that attitude has kind of got me through. But I've always kind of been like that, um, which I think it is good. But it's just, I suppose, being in the public eye, as they call it, it is so much harder because, you know yourself, if you're walking around the supermarket and your son's keep, "Mom, Mom," and you can't really shout at him like you probably did back in the day when no one would know you, because it's kind of an untrusting thing as well. It's like you never know. I mean, you know, the amount of times I've turned around and I've seen people, taking sneaky photos or sneaky videos, or I was in a shoe shop the other day, and it's just really really weird because I was in a shoe shop and all I wanted was a pair of shoes, and the staff that were in there, it was kind of like we're huddled together, and they kept kind of like glancing over, and I was like, "Is there any chat?" And then sort of, I'm still standing there actually just waiting for someone to come over. And then next thing you know, they disappeared out the back of the shop. And then someone else came out of the shop and walked round the shop, stood there, looked in my face, walked back over and went, "Yeah, it's her." And I'm like, do you know, I just find it like so surreal because I'm just me. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and I'm like, I just couldn't stop laughing then. And I'm like, I went up to the till and I'm kind of like, "Have you got these? Blah, blah, blah." And paid for them. And I'm just like, very polite and "Oh, thank you. Have a good day." And walked out. And then they're all huddled together again. And I'm like, but I'm just D. You know what I mean? I'm just D. Who needed a pair of shoes.
See, you were talking about your mum earlier. Totally get where you're coming from when you talk about the grief that you experienced. I experienced it with my nana and granddad, who meant more to me than anything in the world, like your mum did to you. Lost my granddad in 2015, and then 4 years later, lost my nana. And it hits you like a ton of bricks. Many people might be surprised, given kind of, I don't know, Benefit Street or whatever, and the assumptions that they had of you, that you had a really good upbringing. You had a very happy childhood. Tell us a little bit about your mum and the upbringing with her and the positives of that.
Do you know, and I kind of always say this, it's kind of like we had probably the best childhood ever. Do you know what I mean? I mean, my mum and dad are Irish, and they moved over to Birmingham in, I think it was 1969. It's kind of like really funny because they were from a tiny little village in Ireland. And rumor had it that they'd left the country, that they'd left Ireland because she was pregnant. But obviously, that wasn't the case because I never came along. I think it was about 2 or 3 years later. But yeah, born and bred, and again on a little street called Marroway Street in Ladywood, Birmingham. It's, they were, you kind of like when you look back, but you kind of don't see it at the time, if that makes sense. Like my dad, obviously, proper old school Irishman, was in the construction business and always off working. And then back in the day, mum was at home, looking after the kids. But obviously, our childhood was amazing because it's exactly what you see on like, old TV shows, everyone's door was open, everyone's kids, we just all played together. I remember we had the big tin bath and, like the neighbours sharing the bath. And I suppose when you kind of look back on it, even though we sort of never wanted for anything, do you know what I mean? We always had clothes on our backs and always had food on the table. And, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, but you sort of presume that everyone was kind of like that. But I suppose they probably weren't, because if mom was like cooking a dinner, she'd feed anybody, but then we could walk into anyone else's house and be fed. And it was the best childhood ever. We used to have holidays to the seaside, and then but again we were blessed because obviously school holidays we'd always go away to Ireland, etc. I remember me and my sister, we used to get put on a train or a ferry or an aeroplane and shipped off for the 6 weeks. And but that's what we just thought was normal. But it's like you say, she was my best friend, as annoying as she was, because she was annoying, Zoe. Do you know what I mean? It's like she kind of like wasn't in the best of health. She had a hip replacement operation. And not long after the surgery, she developed a blood clot in her lung, which could have actually killed her. But it's just saving grace that that we were there, and she kind of just passed out. But from that point, she had really bad health problems and sarcoidosis and pulmonary hypertension. So, you know, I knew her as like a really active mum who then went into a very, very poorly mum. But the children kind of never really knew her as anything different. They knew her, she was Nanny who had the oxygen all around the house and the tubes up the nose and, on her scooters. But obviously to kids, they thought that was hilarious, didn't they? Because to them, they were allowed to ride the scooters around the house and, it was brilliant. But it's kind of like, it's mad when I don't think people appreciate their mums as much, I suppose, when they're actually alive. It's hard, isn't it? Because I suppose you just go through life day by day, but when you haven't got them anymore, it's really, really hard. I mean, I was having like this discussion probably about 2, 3 weeks ago with a friend of mine, and I kind of hate my parents for the fact that they were good parents. Does that make sense? Because I'm kind of like of the mindset, well, if they were horrible parents, then I probably wouldn't miss them as much, because obviously I lost my dad then 5 years after my mum. So I've lost both my parents. And when they're here, I don't think you appreciate exactly, I suppose the relationship. You just live day by day, don't you? It's like you answer the phone, it's mum. Oh God, she's doing me head in. You hang up, you go and visit her, and you have your little bickerment, your little bickers, your little arguments. I mean, me and my mum, we used to have cracking arguments. Do you know what I'm saying? I'd go, I'm not answering her now. I'm not answering her now. Mum would be the one who'd ring you like 10 times a day, and it'd be, oh, what she want now? And but
It's those special moments though that you hold in your heart, and it never ever disappears. And I think
it doesn't. But I think it's sad that you don't realise that, and you don't realise the extent of that until after they're gone.
Yeah,
And that's the horrible,
yeah, I know what you mean. But I mean, I guess for me with my nana and granddad, I think, I do a lot of meditation and I have like a meditation
Yeah,
podcast. And there's a few meditations that I do where and they're not that long, but I'm taking myself back and I'm connecting with positive events in my life. There's one event that I've got with my granddad, and I lived this event as though it was yesterday. And it was when I'd go and knock on his door, because I used to live in Liverpool. I lived in Liverpool for 10 years and he lived up north. And I'd go down to see him and I'd knock on his door. And he used to have some curtains over the door. And it was a window with some curtains over. And then he had like wooden floorboards, so I could hear his feet coming down the floorboard. And I'd get really excited, knowing that he was coming towards the door. And I know that he would prolong him getting to the door because he was excited as well. Then he'd open the curtains and he'd smile and he'd say in his Yorkshire accent, "Is that our Zoe?" And then he'd give me a big hug. And that hug, like I could close my eyes now and it was almost like it was happening to me right now. And that's kind of like the beauty of it. And there was a book that I read by a guy called Friedrich Nietzsche, I think his name is. And it was, I can't remember the name of it, but it's a really famous book. And he was a survivor of the Holocaust. But he went into the concentration camp with his wife. And but they were separated. And I think quite early on, his wife was sent into the queue that went straight to the gas chambers. But he wrote in his book, and there's a part of his book that just kind of it really resonated with me. And it was, he something like he was clinging to an image that is of his wife. He didn't know if she was alive or dead. But he said none of that mattered because she was alive in his heart. And that helped me, I think, with my grandparents and their passing. Because because we've all got to die at one stage. We're going to die at one stage, but it's just holding those precious moments. And even though someone's not living physically, they can still live within your heart, and you can still hold those amazing feelings that you used to feel with your mum, and you can still grasp them whenever you want.
Do you know what it kind of is with me? And I don't know if this is everyone's mindset or it's with me. It's like they make me sad. Do you know what I mean? It's like every time I remember a happy memory, and there was loads, and even like a not happy memory, like even if I remember, like I said to you, all the arguments and all the snapping and it just makes me sad. And that's what I'd rather not remember, because I don't want to be sad, because knowing it's a difficult one, isn't it? It's like I can smile at a memory, but then I just get sad, and I find it harder to snap out of the sad mode than I do. It's like, like we just remember sort of like, I'm just laughing here because we do laugh and joke. We remember going to the seaside the once with the children, and it was mum and this bloody mobility scooter, Zoe, I swear to God. And she fell asleep on the scooter, and she crashed. She crashed. She was in an amusement arcade, and she crashed into one of the machines, because we just looked up and we said, "Oh, where's she going?" And we could see, and her head was like getting drowsy. And she crashed into this machine, and all the alarms started to go off, because I think, they must have thought someone was trying to rob one of these. I mean, and we were like, I was like, "Oh, I don't know her." And I remember the children going, "Oh, it's Nanny." And I was like, "No, it's not." Because she was just sitting there holding this scoop. But then it just makes me really sad. You know what I mean? It's like a moment of remembering, then just, you know. But it's like you. There's just millions and millions and millions of amazing memories. I was saying to my cousin the other day, it's like, um, obviously, she's on my mum's side, and she's going away on Wednesday, and it'll be the first time in 2 years that she's been able to see her mum. You know what I mean? And I'm sitting there like oh my God, it's going to be amazing. And she's like, I ain't going to cry because she's really like, she's rock hard, is my cousin. And I'm kind of like, listen, you need to just, embrace it, man, because I'd love to be like, you know what I mean? It's like, love to be just going to see my mum or going to see my dad
Yeah,
or
definitely.
it's weird.
Well, you were blessed. You were blessed to have such amazing
Oh,
parents.
1,000,000%, 1,000,000. But then it's a knock-on effect, isn't it? Because then you see it in the kids. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, it's hard when you sort of like yourself, but then loss can be a very selfish thing, can't it? And it's like then like last week I saw a picture of, my daughter had posted on Facebook, and it's her sitting there with the right miserable face, but her granddad standing behind her, and it's kind of like, loss can be very, very selfish, but then you've also got to remember that, oh my God, yeah, of course, they really miss them as well.
Mm.
And it's about, I suppose, we talk about them all the time. We've got pictures up and memories and this, that, and the other. Like my son, I mean, it's so funny. I mean, he's 14 years old, but he still runs around his house in like a pair of my dad's, like, the long johns,
Mm.
which are like the old thermal long john,
Yeah,
and they've got holes in them galore, but he won't throw them away because they're his granddad's.
yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying? And it's kind of like really strange now that he can actually fit in them now, whereas before they're just like for. And it's just things like that, isn't it? It's like, but it is like you say, I suppose, little memories like a pair of thermal sort of like tights. You know what I mean? It still means the world to him because they were his granddads,
Yeah,
and
definitely. And grandparents are so special. Very, very special. Dee, let's change the subject a little bit. So your life has changed massively now, but if you could take yourself back to maybe a few years before, in a way that you were thrust into the spotlight, is there anything that you would say to yourself, knowing what you know now? What would you say to yourself then to maybe help you navigate it?
in kind of a bittersweet way, I'd have probably told myself not to do it, if I'm honest with you, Zoe. And this again, it goes down to when people say, have you got any regrets? I don't think you can have regrets. Do you know what I'm saying? But my life was perfectly happy. I was perfectly happy where I was. It's like I had a roof over my head, the children were fine. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like before them cameras hit that road, I was perfectly happy. So it's kind of like, and I suppose didn't want to change anything. So if I was sort of standing there now and someone was standing in front of me and saying, oh, we're doing a documentary for Channel 4, do you want to be part of it? I'd probably say no. But again, that's on the flip side. Now that I have done it, I am kind of grateful because of the opportunities it
Mm.
has given me. And it has given me, you know, the new friends that I've made, the people I've got in my life, the opportunities that have come through that. So it's kind of like, it's very bittersweet, isn't it? It's like, but if I was standing there now back in 2012, 2013, I'd say, no, you're all right. But even
So
like the
that is a
now
bit of a
bit,
contradiction because there's loads of good
yeah,
things that have come out of it, right? You're saying you've got new friendships, and that was going to be another question that I was going to ask you as well about peer groups and what your view on that is. Because Tony Robbins, he says that our lives are a direct reflection of the expectation of our peer group. So, the people we hang around with, and I'm sure there's been a time in my life when I've had to really question the people who I had around me, and I had to let some of them go in order to move forward with my life. Has there ever been a time in your life when you had to evaluate the people around you and maybe move on from that.
1,000,000%. And this is kind of like, it's it is very bittersweet because it's true, isn't it? The saying is true. It's like, when the tough gets tough, it is that's when people do show their true selves, I think. And it's kind of like, I'm probably without in my life now some of the people that I probably thought I would have in my life forever. And that's kind of like, very bitter. And that hurt a lot, Zoe. Do you know what I'm saying? And it's kind of like, again, it goes to the saying, isn't it, that sometimes it's those that are closer to you that will shock you. And it's about the true colours, I suppose, and it's like, and I'm always kind of like, and it hurts. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, but again, I think that kind of like gets my guard up, or it has got my guard up, because I'm also very untrusting. It's very, very hard to to kind of like to trust those who are probably just coming into my life, if that makes sense, because I'm always looking that some people may have an ulterior motive, because I've come across people that have had an ulterior motive.
You've been hurt.
Do you know what I mean?
And you've been shit on, basically.
Yes.
So you've got wounds there that are
1,000,000%.
unhealed, which are affecting
1,000,000%. And I think it's kind of like, not blowing my own or not bigging myself up, but I think when you find I am one of them genuine people. I don't want anything off anybody. Do you know what I mean? All I kind of like expect, I'm not even going to say demand, and this goes with regards to everyone's different, is is truth and loyalty. How hard is it to sort of like, to ask for truth and loyalty? Do you know what I mean? It's like, and again, I suppose it's just been highlighted since, obviously, I've been in the public eye. It's kind of like the amount of times I've been done over. Oh my God. And I wouldn't even think of doing anyone over. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like being done over and used for people's own gain. And I'd never use anyone for their own personal, I'd never use someone for my gain. I just can't understand how that's actually built into some people.
These are people that actually know you, right? Or new friendships?
Both. To be fair, absolutely both. And it's kind of like, it's just a strange one, isn't it? It's sort of like, I've still got loads of friends that I had from like, from the day I was born, which is really weird. It's like childhood friends. I've still got loads that were still so close, and junior school friends were still so close. Senior school friends were still so close. But I've also got new friends that I now class as family, and I know would never ever kind of like do me over. But you've always got that element of doubt until you get to know people. It's like, it's you meet people, you become acquaintances, you get to know them, and it's like even something small of, oh, I can't believe so and so. Is there any chance you can get me a video for my birthday? And I'm like, well, no, because that's my friend. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, and it's oh, well, you should have told me you were going there. I'd love to meet so and so, and I'm like, okay. But it's, and it's like, oh, I had to come with, and it's, I just can't take that, because that's, to me, is that you're not my friend for being my friend. You're my friend for the meeting of other people, or the chance of having your photo taken, or coming here or coming there. I don't like that, Zoe. Do you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, it's just a weird one. Managers, when they swoon on you, and I've got your best interests in heart, and this, that, and the other, and you think nobody in this world has really got your best interests in heart.
This is when our sixth sense comes in, and that intuition comes in, that we just have to rely on. And I know, I think it's maybe healthy to have your guard up a little bit, but I think it's probably even healthier just to trust people. And if they shit on you, then
See, this is the thing, and it's kind of like I am a very trusting person. I kind of always am, but I'm kind of like, I'm very of the mindset you can do me bad, but you'll only do me bad once. Do you know what I mean? But even that, like that one time of doing me bad, it bloody hurts. And I think that's kind of like, but you don't want to have to change, do you? Do you know what I'm saying? It's like I don't want to have to be second guessing every single person I meet or every single person I speak to, because that just completely muddles up your mind. It's like just go with the flow. And I don't know, it's kind of like don't invest too much into a relationship. Even not regards for not, but by relationship I mean kind of like friendship or whatever, shall we say. It's you know there's a fine line with acquaintances. Oh, I've had it all the time with Caitlin, like, and stuff like that's my daughter. Oh, I know your mum, and I'm like, no, I don't know them. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh, I'm your mum's friend. Well, I don't even, and stuff like that. And it's kind of like, I don't know, but yeah. But that's the thing, I suppose. It's like you've kind of got to have your wits about you, but you don't want to have them too much about you to the extreme where you're absolutely driving yourself mad by questioning everything. Just go with the flow. I wish I could just go with the flow. It's a lot more easier, isn't it? And it's like, I suppose I make things worse for myself.
I think we all do. We all do. We all overthink
because
things.
It's the once bitten, isn't it? The once bitten, twice shy. But I've been bitten more than once, unfortunately. So,
you're doing some amazing things at the moment in terms of. I know you're very active with your interviews, and you're doing a collaboration. I think you're an ambassador for Balls. Is it Balls to Cancer? You do a lot of interviews. Tell us a little bit about that.
Sorry. Now, obviously, Balls to Cancer is a charity that is very, very close to my heart. It's a family-run charity here in by Mark and Susan Bates, and they set it up predominantly because of their loss. You know what I mean? It was originally set up as a male cancer support charity, but now they just support anybody who's affected in any way at all by cancer. I'm an ambassador for their charity, and then every Thursday I do an Ask Auntie D. It's a Facebook and Instagram live where I get to, sit there and be completely starstruck because I'm interviewing, famous people that I've also just watched, and I do get very, very starstruck, which is, it's like I'm just a normal person, but I absolutely love that.
Do you like the interviewing? Because it's a bit like me. I'd had no experience interviewing people, and then I decided to start this podcast to raise awareness on mental health and this book that I was writing, which still hasn't been finished, but it will eventually. But like yourself, and also to challenge fears as well, because I was quite shy. And
yeah, I'm actually quite shy, believe it or not. And this is what a lot of people can't kind of like. I think, the persona that I give out, and I don't know how I give it out, Zoe, but I am a really kind of like shy person. But it's like, obviously, when I'm doing these interviews, I see it more as like a chat. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, but I build myself up and I get so stressed because obviously, these are people that I've watched on my TV screens, or they're absolute legends in their fields, half of them. And it's not until you kind of like you get chatting. I do it kind of more from like a chat point of view that you're like, something, they are just normal people. And we just end up having such a laugh that I don't have like set questions. I just go with the flow.
And
Yeah.
That's a good skill, right? I mean, I've sat
Oh,
down with...
it's apparently it's amazing.
Yeah. I've sat down with you and Kelly, and you're a natural at this, right? You are a natural at
Oh,
it. I'm not. I don't feel that I am. But, I also believe that the more you practice, the better you get, right?
Zoe, I could have a whole list of questions and good old Google, where you're kind of like, right, because I've got to do this. But you've got to kind of look at it. I kind of look at it from the point of view of these people have obviously, probably been asked the same question a million times. So you do your Googling, you do your whatever, they come on the screen. The second you see them, it's like I probably never ever ask anyone one question that I've planned to ask them. And I think that's what kind of throws them. It's like, because you just get into it. And I kind of like, I'm nosy. Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's how I look at it. I want to know everything about everything. It's like, if it's someone in the soaps, I'm like, come on, you've got to tell us, did so and so kill so and so? And they're like, well, I can't tell you that. And I'm like, yeah, you can. You know what I mean? And it's like, why can't? So, and that's kind of how I do it. But if I had to sort of have a list of questions, I suppose it'd probably be an epic fail because my attention span just goes.
What has been your favourite interview so far, and something that you personally maybe took something from?
Do you know what and this is like really one of the ones that I was totally dreading so much that I practically nearly made myself sick over worrying about it was what I could call the actor Lawrence Fox. Now, Lawrence is, shall we say, very controversial. Do you know what I mean? It's like he ran for mayor of London, obviously in the last election, and he is very, very controversial. And I was like, oh my God. But again, this is me, I suppose, prejudging, because in my eyes, he is probably what I'd say from more of an upper class. And I sort of see myself as, right down here with the working class, power to the working class people. But it's like, we kind of like when he came on the screen and stuff, and the second I kind of started talking to him, we just ended up having such a laugh. And it was like, I mean, it's well recorded that he was one of these, that didn't believe in the lockdown and kept like having these parties, and the police had kept turning up at his house and, to lock down these parties. But he could kind of like take the banter, if that makes sense. It's like, you see someone like him, obviously from the West Midlands, and I'm like, I says, oh, we're having, the Balls to Cancer. It's the 10th anniversary ball in November. Do you fancy coming? And he's like, where is it? And I'm like, I'm at a little place called Wolverhampton. And I'm thinking he's probably never heard. And he's like, oh, I know Wolverhampton. I'm so like, how do you know Wolverhampton? Do you know what I mean? It's like when you're walking around like Chelsea and this, that, and the other. And he's like, oh, my partner's from Wolverhampton. I'm like, really? So that's really strange. And then going into that, and it was like, well, how did you meet her when we're supposed to be under a lockdown? He's like, no comment, no comment, But having and that one really, really shocked me.
Because like you say, we're all the same. It doesn't matter whether or not you went to private school, whether or not you went to state school, whether or not you brought up in a mansion, whether or not you were brought up in a 2 up, 2 down in Turner Street. We're all the same.
And it's you saying that, obviously, it's where I'm a massive Liverpool football. I just, obviously, I named my son Gerrard after Steven Gerrard. And I remember they surprised me the once because they brought, Neil Ruddock, Razor Ruddock. And he's like one of my all-time heroes. And they brought him on as a surprise. Zoe, I just cried through the whole thing. I never even asked him any questions because I was like, oh my God, oh my God. And that was like how the whole sort of interview was like, I can't believe it's you. And I'm calling like everyone, come here, look. And they're like, well, we can see it because we're watching it. So it's very like that. And it's like, just go with the flow. That's what I say. It's kind of like, because plans never work out, even with regards to interviews,
I
to
mean,
be
look at that.
fair.
That's amazing, isn't it? Like, who would have thought that Benefit Street, that you would be interviewing
I know.
Neil, what is it,
Heroes.
Neil Razor Ruddock? You know, someone
Neil
that,
Razor Ruddock,
yeah, I was
yeah.
the same with Kelly Holmes when I was interviewing Kelly. I was
Wow.
nervous as anything, but I prepared. Oh my God! And I think you could tell that I'd prepared and that I was passionate about running as well.
Yeah.
But my gosh, I was a little bit nervous about that. But like you say, we're all people, and
Exactly. And
we're
that's
all
my
the
motto.
same.
We're all, yes, yes. Yeah. I mean, I have come across a few who I'm like, okay, then you definitely think you're a whole different league. Do you know what I'm saying? But
So maybe we're going to
yeah,
have the D. Kelly show in the future. I don't know, maybe ITV or Channel 4 are going to say, oh, she's pretty good at interviewing. She's a bit raw and
they,
real.
they
Let's...
need to make them really long because I'm telling you, once I start, as you probably know now, once I start, Zoe, I just don't stop.
Dee, tell us a little bit about the charity as well that I believe you've set up your own foundation or your own charity.
It's not so much a charity at the moment. We're a community interest company at the moment, but we're looking over. Well, we have to sort of, sometime this year or early next year, is actually turning it into a business. It's actually called Birmingham Says No to Knife Crime and Youth Violence. Um, I'm a co-director of the company with a friend of mine called Rachel Warren. And the long and short of it is, obviously, we're both in different ways victims of what you call knife crime. But oh, Zoe, knife crime and youth violence it's so on the up over here, and it's like, every single day you just hear about kids killing kids or people losing their lives through being stabbed or shot or beaten up, and it's absolutely horrific. And what we do at Birmingham Says No is we actually put on free events for young people. Services have been cut by obviously the government and the powers that be, but they're being cut in the wrong places. Like, the police have had the the cuts in the police force are absolutely ridiculous. Youth services have been cut. Um, so there's absolutely nothing to do. And a lot of these kids, the gangs that have been, that are up and running at the moment, I think currently in Birmingham, we probably have over 15, 20 active big youth gangs. And they actually really mean business. We've had, over the past couple of months, we've had 15-year-old boys lose their life to gang violence. Now, I've got a 14-year-old son, Zoe, do you know what I mean? And I dread every second that boy and his friends are outside, because I just know it's just not safe. It isn't safe. So basically, Birmingham Says No. We're the voice of young people. Not a lot of people listen to young people. They don't take time out to listen to what young people have to say. And the young people out there, they're very knowledgeable. They know what they want. They know where they want to go. But because they're young, the powers that be, they just don't want to listen to them or hear their voice. We put on free events for young people, um, whether it be dance competitions, music competitions, online gaming, anything they want to do. We will try and accommodate it. We've got the young bike life lads. If you see a group of kids riding up the road on a bike, a lot of people automatically, they're out causing trouble. They're not. They're out riding their bikes. But it's not to say that there isn't a group who is out causing trouble, but not all of them. And this is what we're here for. It's like we've managed to have. We only started in late 2019, and we were locked up, that sounds awful, but you know what I mean, locked down for over 18 months. But we've managed to have probably about three live events for young people, and we've had over practically nearly 2,000 young people turn up just to have fun and just to feel safe and just to mix because it's this postcode war. It's absolutely ridiculous. These young people fighting and killing over a postcode. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
It's crazy. It
But
sounds like something from
it
like
is.
the movies years ago, doesn't it? You know, like the Brat Pack
It's actually
movies. And you've
it's
got
worse. And that's the thing, it's worse than the movies because for some unknown reason, these young people they've got no boundaries. Do you know
mm,
what I'm saying? It's like, I mean, I could never ever, if you think back to being 14 years old, and it's happening from younger. I mean, there's a lot of like child exploitation as well, where you've got these elders that they're grooming children from 8, 9, 10 years old because they know that by law they can't be prosecuted to actually carry drugs from county to county. And oh, it's absolutely heartbreaking. And it's kind of like, you know me, Zoe, I'm in the mindset, if I can save the world, I'll save the world, but if we can
mm.
save one child at a time, then it'll, we'll do it one child at a
How
time.
easy is
It's
it to infiltrate and to really kind of, you know, those cultural practices? Because
it's not.
I know what it's like as a child growing up amongst, um, y- you know, I mean, I left home at a very early age, and even though I grew up in a small town, there was a big heroin problem. You know, I was around drugs a lot, and that's what happens. You end up taking them, and you know, my life could have easily gone one way, easily. I know people that have died. So many people who have died of heroin overdoses. You know, thankfully, there was some belief I had in myself, and I always knew it was deep inside, and I used that to kind of move move forward and make something out of my life. But it's not easy. It's not easy when you know you're in that environment and you've got that gang culture, and then you've got drugs
Hmm.
involved.
Sorry, yeah, and do you know what it is as well? It's you saying that. It's kind of like too many of our young people nowadays are being told that they will never make anything of their lives.
Mm,
So the more a young person, the more any person is told you're not going to become anything, they're going to think they're not going to become anything
mm,
because, no matter how hard they try. And the sad reality of it is you see it in schools. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like teachers and people that teach these children, not all teachers, but some teachers, you cannot be telling a group of, a group of young people that you're not going to become anything. Role models, you're supposed to be their role model. You're there to teach them. Parents are there to teach them. Peers, it's like, oh my God, I feel so sorry for my son's friends because the second they walk through my front door, I'm on them. And it's like, not for being like, on. I'm just like, well, does your mum know where you are? Do you think? Because it's about keeping them safe, talking to them, making them believe that they can be whatever they want to be. Like, we'll have it this way, like one of them, oh, I want to actually, I want to be a cricketer. And then you've got the others, you ain't never going to play cricket. And I'm like, what are you telling him that for? You know what I mean? If he wants to be a cricketer, he can be a cricketer. Do you know what I mean? It's like, and it's about just instilling in these people that, that every single person out there is worth it because there's too many people quick and ready to say, you're not worth anything. Well, you are. They are. They are worth it.
and it's incredible that you're using your platform as well for good. And I think people will be able to relate with you, um, because of your background and where you're from. There's probably a lot of people from similar backgrounds who maybe look up to you, who are not where they want to be right now in life. Maybe they feel a bit stuck. Maybe they're on benefits and they don't see a way out. What would you say to them? What bit of advice would you give to them?
Do you know, I would actually say to them, listen, there is nothing wrong with being on benefits. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, I mean, look, we've just gone through a global pandemic, Zoe. I had the amount of people with regards to who sent me messages who were like, oh, what do you think of all these people now that have ended up on universal credit because they've lost their jobs and this? And I said, do you know something? What do you mean? What do I think of them? Everybody's life can change at the drop of a hat. And this is what I've said. You could have the best job in the world today. Tomorrow, you could have nothing. And that's why in my eyes, you should never ever look down on a person for their circumstances. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like if you're on benefits, you're on benefits. Do you know what I'm saying? It doesn't make you the worst person in the world for the situation that you're in. But it's like there are jobs out there, there are people out there who can advise you. You know, you've just got to live your life as you. Don't live it to what you think other people believe you should be living it. And that's the hard thing. It's like, I was on benefits, this kind of like that didn't make me a bad person because it was just my situation at the time. I'm like not on benefits now, but I'd never ever look down on someone who was. Do you know what I mean? It's like nobody knows what this life has in store for anybody. And like I said to you, everybody say it could just change at a drop of a hat.
Yeah.
You've just got to live your life as and when, it happens.
Yeah.
And don't ever let anyone think that you're worthless for being in a situation that you're in.
I think you've achieved so much in your life and over the last few years, and you should be very proud of yourself. Do you ever take a step back and give yourself a pat on the back for what you've done?
Never, never, ever, ever. I am probably, what's the expression? My worst critic, is it? Kind of like, there is an expression, isn't there? I beat myself up too much, Zoe, and this is kind of like, you know what I mean? I don't do what I do for thanks. I don't do it for recognition. I don't do anything for, to kind of like say, oh, I've done this, I've done that, look at me. But like I do it just because I care. I do what I do because I care. But like I can't take what's the word? I can't take not appreciation because I don't want appreciation. What's the word? The opposite to criticism. Like that's yeah. I can't take it because I kind of like I do. I'm kind of like I am. I just beat myself up all the time, and it's like I often think, I'm like sitting here and I'm like, I must be a bad person, and I constantly question, am I a good mum? And I constantly question, am I a good friend? I constantly question because other people sometimes make you feel like you are. And this is do you know what I mean? It's like, and again, this is down to,
sounds like maybe there's work to do on self-love. And I
I've
think,
got,
think we've all got that, me included. We have to really look within ourselves and learn to love who we are and just what we've achieved and where we are right now in our lives, and just, kind of say well done for that.
I mean, it's very bittersweet, isn't it? It is very bittersweet because I think if I ever got my mind set to the point where it'd be, something you have done good, then there'll always be that one person who'll knock you down. And it's like one knockdown compared to 10 pickups. It's always the knockdown, isn't it? It's always the knockdown that affects you.
If we let it,
and
yeah.
kind of, I'm kind of good at that, if that makes sense. I'm good at letting the bad outweigh the good.
What would be the perfect life for you if you were like to close your eyes and wake up and your life was exactly how you wanted it to be in terms of career, personal relationships? I don't know, anything. What would that look like for you?
Do you know, the perfect life for me
I know there's
at
no
this
perfect,
precise,
but you know what I
yeah,
mean.
at this precise moment in time would be, it'd have to be, that outside that front door, that I know that we could go, our children could go, our parents, our friends, our family could go, and know that they'd make it back safe. The world is such a horrible place at the moment. And it's kind of like, how has it come to this? Do you know what I mean? It's like, I mean, don't get me wrong, you've seen it all when you watch like the good old Peaky Blinders and things like that. You always had like, would you call them like the little scallywags and the things like that. But it's like to kind of like not know whether or not, you know, your children are going to end up coming home safe, or not know that, if you seen it, oh, the whole world is just a horrible, vile, nasty place at the moment. And no one seems to care. Just be great if you could have a world full of those who can make the changes to actually be bothered, about another life being taken, or another this being taken, or another mass shooting, or war being broke. It's just horrible, isn't it? It's just, ugh, a perfect life would be just everybody just being able to live their life how they want to live their life, without fear of losing their life or losing someone close to them through non-natural causes, shall we say.
Okay, Dee, we've been chatting now for like an hour and 15 minutes. There's so many things, there's so many questions I haven't asked you as well. I could actually just sit
Part
here and
two,
talk to
Zoe,
you all
part
day.
two.
Definitely, we'll definitely have to do a part 2. Dee,
Oh,
thank you so much for being an amazing guest, and I think you should take that step back and give yourself the pat on the back, because you're using your platform for good. Everything you're doing with the Balls for Cancer, it's absolutely amazing, and with the gun crime, it's incredible. I think if we can change children, we can change the direction of their lives. You can change the future.
see, and this is the thing, you know what I mean? It's like they are our future. You know what I mean? They need to know that there are people out there who do believe in them, and that's us. We need to tell them more often. You know what I mean?
100%.
It's like that they are worth it, and no matter what, they're unique. And just be who you are, and you will. You know what I mean? It's like, don't ever, ever let anybody put you down.
Yeah.
It's like, you are our future, and fingers crossed there'll be a brighter future for the young people.